Hey everyone, it's Elicia Miller, and I'm here with
Jocelyn Robinson, a longtime client and friend.
And we wanted to get together today to talk about the core emotional healing model that I developed, and in the process of doing your own emotional healing work, because it's really a whole other experience in terms of when you're working on an emotional level versus doing many other types of healing work. And so the process can be very complex and tricky and frustrating and at times. So we want to kind of just talk about the reality of it, to set expectations, so you know what it takes in terms of the support, what the process is like, how it unfolds, how long it takes. So I have a structured online program and retreat, which are both group processes, and I developed this model to provide the this combination of group work and lessons and my insights into resistance, defenses, and triggers, which is that tricky part of the process that is hard to, pretty much impossible to navigate by yourself. And even if you're going to therapy, it's that's a whole other this is a whole other thing.
Yeah, agreed.
So the core emotional healing process involves inner child healing and learning how to process out your own repressed emotions and the limiting beliefs that were created from your emotional pain. And then these are all on a subconscious or in your unconscious that typically show up as physical symptoms, relationship problems, struggles, perfectionism, low self-esteem, eating disorders, struggles with food and body image. So this work really addresses all of those. So that's one of the benefits of doing this work, is when you're oftentimes I get clients that come to me just for their physical symptoms.
Like me.
And then they realize that their other symptoms and struggles in life are all related. So once you get to the core emotional healing, then everything else shifts. So it's a harder process that then makes life easier in all areas of your life. And you open up to your intuitive gifts. And through this model, you're learning how to work with your repressed emotions on an ongoing basis and your triggers. So it's a model of empowerment and teaching you how to take care of your emotional needs. And oftentimes, I'm working with people anywhere from 20 years old to 80 years old. So the ingrained patterns, the thought patterns, the avoidance, all of that is so strong that it takes time to learn to be with yourself and think differently, and work with and be with your emotions in a different way. So most people avoid doing this work, unfortunately, until it's like the last resort. So I get a lot of clients who have tried basically everything, including, and they usually start, and including me. So this model came from my own experience, my own journey. And I also, started with diet and supplements and cleanses. And I did a lot of self-awareness work and a lot of energy healing. I did hypnotherapy, EFT. I kind of did some emotional work. I touched on it a little bit. I touched on inner child work a little bit. And then eventually my symptoms and my relationship patterns kept showing up to be like, hey, there's still more to address. You didn't really get to it. So that's typically what I see with the people who come to me. They're like, okay, I've tried everything and this is still happening. This is still showing up. Nothing's working. So we're going to talk about that. And then also I want to encourage people and maybe, you know, get this information out there so you can see the value of doing this work. And you don't have to try everything else first and do this work first and see how everything else works.
Go directly here. Start here.
It makes everything else easier. Trust me. Believe us.
It does. I promise.
And we can, you know, talk about that today.
Yes.
So, yeah. So, yeah. So, I invited Jocelyn here today because she's been working with me for 2 years in many different programs that I offer. So, I wanted Jocelyn to talk about what the healing journey is like after doing the other things and then doing this, what the process is like, what you've gone through, and then sharing some tips so you can know what to expect and how you can support yourself through your own emotional healing journey. So, okay. So if you could start with what your life was like
before I started working with you, right?
Yeah.
Sure. So, you know, I came to you at a time where I was still struggling with a lot of health issues. You know, I had chronic migraine issues for most of my life. You know, I had migraine since I was 6 years old. And been through, like, you know, Alicia's talking a lot of the same things like she had done, I have done in my past. And I even, you know, started to work on a spiritual and emotional level, but I didn't even know or really even understand initially when I first had my first consultation with you. I was kind of like, not sure. Like, I feel like I've done that, but I had no concept of really the work and the level of what I would be getting if I did start working with her. But something in me knew that I needed to work with her. And so I did start working with her at a time where, you know, I struggled with a lot of anxiety and depression, the, you know, diet issues as far as food sensitivities. You know, initially the big thing was the migraines and the extreme candida that I had, because she, you know, Elicia has a big background in helping people heal from candida from the emotional perspective. So all of those things were going on, and, you know, even in my life I can see, like, I was way less empowered. I had way less ability to make decisions, just all different types of things, less independent. So a lot of things prior to doing this work were kind of misaligned and not aligned for me.
You're a completely different person. If you knew Jocelyn before, you know what I'm talking about. Jocelyn's always been an amazing and gifted woman, and I've really enjoyed working with you. Yeah, and we have a lot of similarities, and but your level of struggling, maybe if you want to rate that, like when we started working together, right, you know, around that time, between 1 and 10 in all areas.
I mean, you know, I was probably at a 9 pushing a 10, right? I mean, let's be real.
In what areas?
Oh, in what areas?
Yeah.
I mean, in my emotional health, in my physical health, in my relationships, with my work life and career.
So everything. What did that look like?
You know, I just had I think the biggest thing is, you know, it was walking through seeing the world in a different way, as far as, like, everything was against me, right? Mm-hmm. There was a lot of triggers, and I was so easily triggered all the time. So I was outwardly maybe projecting, like, I'm a happy, positive person, right? Like, mm-hmm. on the outside to people, because people would say that about me. Mm-hmm. But on the inside, it was like the thoughts and the process and the negativity was where I was constantly, right? Mm-hmm. and
which was creating
a lot of, obviously, the outward of my world of the job situation not being good, of my relationships not being supportive, of my health, all my chronic health issues and challenges. So I think,
and not being able to support or believe in yourself that you can do something differently or get out of
I think it was like there was always this belief in me that I knew, like, and I had started shifting right before I started working with you. I had this belief in reading some other things and looking in other healers and stuff that I worked with. I had the belief that I could heal, but it was like I didn't have any concept of how, and it felt like I was just struggling constantly to figure that out, right? Yeah. And how to actually put that into place and really move forward, because it felt like all I was doing was pushing up against challenge after challenge after challenge and not seeing like anything unfold in a positive direction, which in turn made me feel more negative and made me feel, and it just kind of spiraled back into it, right?
Yeah. So then once we started working together, what was your process like?
So working with you, what for me was all about, like, I did kind of jump into working with you, but I needed the constant support, right? Because it was, we would have initially these weekly or bi-weekly calls. Then I would go and do my work, and I even, was doing, in addition to that, I was working on the home study by myself and working through that. So it was a lot of, understanding that, okay, I have these assignments to do and I'm working through on my own, but I also have the support. And I also, had, at the time I was, signed up for the email support too, so I could email you questions.
Yeah.
So there was constant communication between us, because there was so much coming up for me and so much for me to learn and understand, and so much I couldn't see.
Yeah.
There was a lot I didn't understand, and so I would say, okay, this is what's happening, and you could give me that perspective. Oh, well, this is why, and you need to go here, this is how you should look at processing, and that kind of thing, so I could really, really understand better.
Yeah. So the moving from that way of living, from all of these like old beliefs about yourself, and seeing life from that perspective, and really, do you think the beliefs that nothing's working, or the feeling that nothing's working, came from your emotional wounds as a child?
Yeah, I mean, I think it came a lot from the wounds, and then patterns that developed early. Yeah, very early. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So it's hard to change just like your mindset, and maybe that's some of the work you started to do, until you process out those repressed emotions.
Yes, because I did work a lot with that kind of the belief system and affirmations and looking at, how you could do that. But yeah, it wasn't clicking fully, because I didn't have that piece of working on the emotions the way you do.
Yeah. And so you needed, and this is typical, and I guess this is what, one of the things is, like, when you're coming from so much suffering and you can't see, I guess the point I want to make is that it takes a lot of support up front and consistently to move through a lot of the painful events, and things that are hidden within you, and the way that you're looking at things and perceiving things, and all of the triggers and all of that is so difficult at first, and it needs consistent support. And now I have a different program than when you started. Yes. So my 60-day program provides a lot of that consistency, where you're in a Facebook group where you can share on a daily basis, and I can help you with whatever's coming up, the resistance, the tricky ways that you project your own shame and self-judgments and criticism onto your inner child, who projects it onto you. And there's so many it's impossible to do this deep work by yourself because you have these ingrained ways of feeling about yourself that gets projected into your own process. So it's important to work with someone like myself who can help you develop a new, more nurturing and compassionate way of being with your emotions and your thoughts, your inner child. And the inner child is you. So there isn't, it's just that aspect of yourself that needs that loving and nurturing care. And so even that process, it takes time to develop that. We typically have been hard on ourselves in our society. Our parents were hard on us, or they were shut down, and so we all of a sudden are hard on ourselves because we didn't feel really seen and loved and valued and supported. So from all of that, we just feel like there's something wrong with us, and we're never going to get what we need, and it's so it takes time to work through that and reparent yourself in a completely different way. And it really is like there should be a school on this.
Yes. Oh my gosh, love it. Yes.
I haven't said this before. So
new plan.
Yeah. So and that's what it takes. And I say the 60-day online program in the retreat is just kind of like a way to go into these places that you can't go to on your own, because I do specialize in resistance and those defenses that keep you from feeling your pain because you've been protecting it, and those protections actually create things that you believe about yourself that aren't true, or things you believe about this process that keeps you from it, or the excuses that come up to not do the work. So I think that's my number one thing, is to stress like the consistency and to make sure that you have a consistent support system of someone to help model this new behavior and to help bring compassion to your own process, and that you can do this, and it takes time, and it's okay if you have no idea what you're doing, even though you went through maybe 60 days, because you can share about your process and how, like, after the 60 days, it's not, I give you a lot of the tools, but you will get to a point where you don't know what to do or how to use them. It's just kind of an introduction to this work, and so it's important to continue to get support through your own process to learn how to use these tools and integrate what you've learned, because it does take time to learn new behaviors and ways of relating. And Jocelyn, you had Jocelyn worked with me every week for 3 months. She had private calls and group calls.
Yes.
And the home study that I have. And then you went on the retreat. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Jocelyn went on our first Costa Rica retreat. So what was that like?
So yeah, I had been working, I think, just like Elicia said, like the consistency, because I had been working with her for a while, and I had started shedding a lot of the layers of what I needed to heal, and started making that relationship with my inner child. But I would have never been able to connect to her and have that relationship had I not worked with you and had those really one-on-one sessions where you were able to guide me, because there was such a disconnect. I couldn't do it on my own. Yeah. I tried, and there were several times where we would come back together and we would focus on that so that I could get to that point. And then from there, I was able to establish that connection and start working with it on my own. Mm-hmm. But it did take that help from me at first.
Yeah.
And then,
which is a normal thing. So even if someone's going through my 60-day program, they may not feel a strong connection with their inner child, because the inner child, that aspect of yourself, was abandoned as a child. So you were emotionally, most everyone was emotionally abandoned as a child. So it's hard to connect to that, because we tend to abandon ourselves emotionally, and then there's this resistance to feeling our emotions. So there's a resistance to connecting to the emotions and connecting to the inner child's emotions. And so that's a normal part of this process. And so I guess I want to stress that as well, is like, it's normal to have a ton of fear and resistance and to feel like it's not working. And so including Jocelyn, I've had tons of clients who are just feel like this isn't working, it's not working, and then all of a sudden there's a shift. And I've had other clients who just cannot connect to their inner child, and then with the consistency of tips and suggestions, then they're able to see it in a different way. And then on the retreat, I helped you connect with your inner child in a deeper way.
It was, I had already been making that connection on my own, and had a lot of process through a lot of different of the steps and tools, and using the home study and different assignments you gave me, right, too. But it is really interesting, because on the retreat there came a time where I needed to work through something, and again there was so much resistance and fear around that you came in and right there and then guided me to my inner child to connect and work through that, because I wasn't able to, even after working on it for a while and having it established the connection, it still was that challenging around that issue we were working on.
And that was one of the most powerful movements for you.
Yes.
Yes,
I had a lot of movement on the retreat. So, I mean, speaking to the retreat, and during the retreat is when my gift of intuitive insight and channeling opened up. So after having that session and working through a lot of that repressed emotions and things I needed to release, this whole gift of being able to connect intuitively opened up for me.
Which Jocelyn is now using in her own business. So
yeah, that's a big shift. For many years I've been in marketing. That's been my field. I've been everything from doing PR to social media management, digital marketing, content writing, just all different types of marketing and strategy and all that kind of stuff. And now I've taken the leap to focus on, this amazing gift I have and how I can help others with it, because it feels really good. It feels like, my purpose and a purpose-driven career, which is one of the areas, funny enough, working with Elicia, like, I didn't know where that was. And she was encouraging to me to keep working my process, keep working through these, and it will unfold. Things will start to unfold. You'll understand more. You'll see more signs. You'll get more things coming in intuitively. And, I got a big thing coming in intuitively. But also just the knowledge of working with her when I was trying to understand, like, how I could serve people, right? And having that support in another way of the mentor, of being like, I can help you kind of continue down this path even after you're learning these tools, and supporting you in your journey of your purpose too, right? So it was kind of a shift for me, right? Where we were focused more a lot on a lot of my physical issues and a lot of the emotional issues, to then starting to shift to like, I have this gift, and how is this going to unfold, and my purpose.
Yeah. That sums up the whole reason why to do this work. So, it's interesting, because I see, and including myself, I struggled for many years trying to figure out what I was doing. I also had a corporate career for 10 years, a very successful sales career, and then it just wasn't aligned with me anymore after I started doing the inner work and started shedding, like, why I was doing it in the first place was not for me. It was for approval and love from my family or society and all of that. So once I got more aligned with supporting people and empowering people and inspiring people to know themselves and to do their own inner work, like, I was on this journey trying to figure it all out and creating so many businesses, which all led me to what I'm doing now. But I hadn't ever thought about doing emotional work. that came from my own journey. And similar to you, Jocelyn had never thought about or pursued intuitive readings and supporting. So it's amazing when you do the emotional work. You don't need to figure anything out. It really, your true self, your true essence, and your gifts arise from that. So we all have them. It's just more of letting them come out through the development and the training ground that the emotional work provides. So one of the, I guess, the growth that happens doing the emotional work is really about surrendering and trusting and listening to yourself and letting go of control. So I think a lot of the resistance of what people are afraid of is when they're holding on to the control and needing to know, like needing to know about their life or what's going to happen, and being afraid of, you know, the unknown, and if their life falls apart and if it gets messy. And so that keeps people from doing the work, but it keeps them in their suffering, and then they become more comfortable, or they just are more complacent in their suffering and comfortable in what they know, even though they're suffering. I actually wrote a blog about that on this rescue dog that we just got, who didn't want to leave her pen. So she was in a pen for, you know, her whole entire life for 9 years, and she was so afraid of leaving her pen, even though she was isolated, alone, and neglected. And eventually we got her, and then she now is with us, and she's like, oh my God, I never thought it could be this good. And this is what this process is like. It's like there's so much fear of actually doing what you need to do, or moving towards the work that's needed to really move you towards what you really want. And the fear arises. The fear is so strong because, you know, the conditioning and just the ways of you felt, you know, people feel safe in, you know, what they know, and trying to control life, which creates more suffering. So the resistance actually creates more suffering. And I would just want to, you know, help people, because there's so much resistance in this work. And, you know, it takes courage and faith and consistent, you know, work. It's something that you need to do for yourself. It's not something anyone can do for you. And so, you know, it's shifting into like, what are you ready to, like Jocelyn's a great example, because she was like you said in the beginning of the video, you're like, I know what I want, and I just don't know how to get there.
Yes.
And Jocelyn approached this process in that place of surrendering to, hey, I don't know how to get there. Help me, like, what do I need to do? And Jocelyn continued to reach out and do the work. Like, okay, so talk about that, like the work that you did that helped you and that continues to help you, and, you know, when you reached out, or what that was like.
Sure. I mean, I think for me, it was always about knowing, like, I had this support, right, of you, like, first and foremost, like, knowing that was there, because I knew that every time I started struggling, oh, I just need to come to Elicia. Like, I need to come back to Elicia and be like, this is what's going on. And I think that it was like, do you want me to go into, like, kind of the tools, like, you?
Yeah, well, like, what would you do in between sessions?
Okay. So a lot of the work, like, in between when we would talk, would be me journaling and going into my process and working with connecting with my inner child, or working on anger work that I needed to process. It was interesting because it would be like layers that would kind of just peel back. Like, it was one layer would peel back, and then it would reveal, oh, something else is coming up. Now I need to address that. So, you know, I feel like in between it was, sometimes it would be, the anger exercises. Sometimes it would be journaling with my inner child. Sometimes it would be journaling about what I envisioned and what I wanted to put into place, because I needed to get clear on what I wanted, right? To put that out there, because that was a big shift for me to understand how to do that and to be more decisive in what I see in my life, right?
Yeah.
So there's been all different types of aspects that you've given me and tools to use and continue to use once we're not, like, you know, having a conversation or something that I have to go and work on.
Yeah. And that's, I admire about you, because you were just like, tell me what to do, and you did it. You actually had no resistance. The resistance shows up in different ways of resisting shifting into a new way of thinking.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's big for me.
Yeah. I know. So
we're all works in progress.
Right. And everyone needs help in different ways.
Well,
and I think that's when you would contact me, is when you had resistance that you couldn't see. And
I didn't understand.
Right.
Yes.
And like a belief that was causing anxiety.
Yes. So I think, to be clear, like I've, you know, since I was 6 years old, I had health issues, right? And I had like a lot of trauma before that. So for me, I had this whole life, my you know, younger life and teenage years, and, you know, in and out of college with chronic migraines. So my whole life was kind of defined by these issues, right? So when I could come to you and I finally found like this solution for me and the right solution for me, I just grabbed onto it, because I was like, this is it. This is right. This is working. This I get. I feel it. I see it. You know, you can ask the people around me or close to me. They've seen huge shifts too, just in my, you know, abilities to deal with day-to-day life, right? Yeah. And so I think for me, it was finding something that could work for me was what I was going to do no matter what. So that, for me, the resistance kind of fell away, because I knew this was the right thing. So I just kept wanting to work through the process and keep going.
So you trusted your intuition.
Yeah.
You're very intuitive.
Yes.
And I'm the same way. I approached my healing journey in the exact same way. Like, as soon as I found something that was truly helping me, I was like, what else? And, you know, I started my healing journey on this type of level 12 years ago, you know. So, and I did, you know, consistent work with mentors and courses, and I kept on saying, what else? Or what's causing this? And so that's another tip or suggestion, is to like stay curious and learn how to develop that type of mind or way of thinking, and move away from the why does this keep happening to me? Nothing works for me. So, you know, this is a model of empowerment, moving away from feeling victimized by life and symptoms and relationship problems and all of that, and victimized by your past, to learning how to truly process it for yourself and move on from it, and to reach out when you're stuck. And I did that consistently as well, with the people that I knew helped me. And I would work with people for years at a time as well, you know, until, you know, I could move on, and I wasn't struggling anymore, or I completed a piece that I needed. So, and then, you know, there's other practitioners too. It's not just me.
Yeah, I think that's I would love to talk about that. Yeah. Is the network that Elicia has too. It's like, once I came to work with Elicia, you know, she also has all these people she works with too that support everything she does too. So it's like it all just flowed and worked in tandem, and so I got support in other areas I needed as well. And it was just amazing, like, this whole world that she could, you know, open me up to as well, for working with all these other people.
Yeah. And so to embrace that as well. And, you know, there's the things I hear from people where they cause more resistance and suffering, is when they say, oh, now I got to spend money on something else. And both of us have the same values in terms of our healing work, because we know that it impacts everything in our life. So whenever I was struggling and I needed support from one of the healers I work with, or a mentor, that would, if I had $100 to my name, I would spend $100 on them, because I knew it would bring me more money. I knew it would shift me out of feeling stuck in whatever I was in. So valuing your own personal healing before anything can reap more rewards and make everything easier. I also see a lot of people searching, and I wanted to go back to kind of like searching for their purpose, and so because they're not clear with what they truly want or what their gifts are yet, I see them taking a bunch of unnecessary trainings or coaching programs, looking outside of themselves for someone else to tell them what to do or how to do it. And so if you do this work first, you'll have your intuition strengthens, and you'll just know what you want. You'll know how it works best for you. And so that's another thing, that's come from my journey is my intuition is so strong in my work. I know exactly what each person needs, where it's coming from. And sometimes I'll like say to Jocelyn, even today, I was like, so blah, 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 can't you see, how this works? And she was like, no. And I was like, okay, it's just how my mind works.
It's like, can you explain that a little more? I'm not quite following exactly.
So yeah, I have a lot of gifts in seeing the patterns in people, where it comes from and what's needed. I also am very intuitive in what's needed with myself and my work and how I work best. And I haven't worked with any coach that knew me as well as I know me. And so I always would I've taken some coaching programs that did help me and shift me and give me a lot of tools. But ultimately, I knew what worked best for me, and listened to myself, and then took the tools that I needed. And so I see people stuck in, that type of model of looking outside of themselves for the doctor or the supplement or the coach or the healer to tell them what to do or how to do it, or to heal them, or, to address what they actually intuitively already know. And so by doing the core emotional work, you'll get clearer and clearer, and you'll know what to do. You'll be more empowered in saying this practice or this supplement is really not what I need, or this way is not who I am. This way is their way, but not my way. And then that's another thing, is I encourage all my clients to do it your way.
Yeah, no, and I want to talk about that, because I think that, initially there's a lot of guidance and support from you and helping to figure out things, because that's needed right in the beginning. But as I started to shift and grow and understand how to tap into my intuition more, I remember more of the, well, what do you think? Have you asked yourself that? Like, tune in and see what you think. So your whole model is designed to empower people and to shift away from, asking out there, even asking you as much, right? Because you need to start learning how to tap into your own intuition and make your own decisions and be empowered. So I think, that's really important to know, that you can get these tools and these strengths where you start developing the wisdom of your own to tap into, right? Because that's the best wisdom, just like you were talking about.
Yeah, it's learning how to change that way of thinking, just like those ingrained patterns. It's like we've been taught to look outside of ourselves, through our culture, and so that pattern of thinking is so ingrained. It does take time, and that's why working on learning how to support yourself on an emotional level, then you create your own emotional support system, an internal support system, where you don't need as much external things to make you feel okay. Practices, that's a whole other topic of like, as long as I meditate and do yoga and read from this passage in this book, and like the structured way of feeling okay about yourself falls away, and then you can naturally go about your day and just do things that feel good to you. And that's like your own internal support system. And then you may want to do yoga, but you don't have to. You may all of a sudden need to meditate on, when it arises, the need may arises. And some people may want to, because it feels good to them, meditate every morning, so it's more of an empowered way of supporting yourself, and learning how to develop that natural, and I call it kind of like, it's talking to yourself in your mind. And so I was like, and I do it all the time. I'm like, well, it's okay. I'll do it tomorrow. And so it's just like developing that way of thinking of like, what do I need to do, or what's causing me stress, or what would help me the most right now? It's like asking yourself those questions internally, and then that becomes a natural practice of what's causing this, or what do I need to do, or maybe I need to journal about it. What am I really worried about if you have anxiety? So how is that now, like compared to a year ago or when we first started? Like that, is it natural now? Do you naturally turn to yourself first?
Yes, yeah. I definitely, I turn to myself first and ask those questions, and I feel in my body a lot more of like, I can feel like, oh, this feels good, or this feels not so good. I don't even know the last time I probably asked you a question about supplements or health. Or, I make those decisions now. I mean, before I needed help and some encouragement and guidance, right? But there's a lot more that I'm super clear on. I think it's become part of my normal world is to check in with myself,
your own guidance,
and
body,
and listen to it,
and then work with your thoughts that may be creating things, or if you don't know what to do, you may journal about it to come up with it.
And so I think now, even before I maybe reach out for support from you, it is that internal thing I do first is journal and check in with my body, look around, try to do play the detective work with myself when I need to figure out what's going on. And then if I still am not at a place, which is far and few between now, but there is sometimes, then that's when I would reach out for support. But for me, it's part of it's life now. Because it was funny, we were talking right before this video about thinking back, right? And because I have to think back to before and how I felt and different things. And I was like, oh, wait, I do have to think back, because I'm not going back there. Yeah. And I'm changed and I've shifted, and this is how I am. This is what's normal. So it was interesting to kind of say, oh, I do have to think about that for a minute.
It feels, because you do shed all these ego constructs and identities that you had formed about yourself, and then you become more you, and then it's hard to reconnect to those old identities. Sometimes I'll be sharing with Doug, like I forget how much suffering I've gone through, like how many times I was completely broke or in depression, and I many people don't know that about me. They just see how my life is now. But I spent after I left my corporate sales career, and I took the courageous journey to get to know myself and be more of myself. It took me 7 years of consistent struggling and moving through depression, and a lot of intense times, a lot of dark, times, and so I'll just start to remember them sometimes, and I totally forget about it, and then I'll share with Doug, and he's like, oh my God, he's like, I can't even imagine that about you, because I'm so different now. I mean, the way I used to react, I was like and this is another thing I notice about my clients, is it's like you're kind of in a constant trigger. Like everything is getting triggered, like everything that's all bottled up is getting triggered. So it's just these so strong, these reactions, and even with especially family members and things like that, the way I used to react and explode and go into a lot of pain that was getting triggered, and I had no context or idea of what was happening. And that's why I developed the model, because I suffered unnecessarily for many years in my triggers and in my struggles and suffering. And so people resist doing this work because it is a longer process than anything else. Like, I mean, it is and it isn't. So it takes more work than just going to the doctor and doing a protocol and going to some holistic treatments, and then you feel a little bit better but nothing changes. So that if you never get to the source of it all, could take the rest of your life. So that's a very long process of suffering and trying to address it. Mm-hmm. And then when you do this work, it takes a lot of people want it to be shorter, or they say like, well, you know, I should feel completely different, you know, after the 60-day program, or I should know better after the 60-day program or the retreat or whatever. And it's like, you know, look at how long you've tried to address this, and actually you're getting to what you need, and it's going to take a little bit longer, but in the grand scheme of things, it's a very short time to make some huge shifts. So reflecting back on my journey, you know, I spent like 7 years, you know, without ever really shifting what I needed. And then after I did this work, everything shifted very quickly. And Jocelyn had already talked about that. Like, we've been working together for 2 years, and her life is completely different. So if you had that resistance of like, I don't want to do the work, or why is it taking so long, then you would have created a longer, you know, process of resistance and suffering, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing I learned was I couldn't focus on a timetable or a time frame. It was just about what's now. Like, what am I doing now? Focus on what's going on right now and what I need to address, and then keep moving forward, right? Yeah. And that's how it would shift. It wasn't about, am I going to spend 6 months? Am I going to spend a year? Am I going to spend 2 years?
How long
Whatever.
is this going to take?
Yeah.
Why is this still happening? So those are the common things that I hear. That, like, and Jocelyn and I, like I said, had similar approaches to this journey, to our healing, where it was like the surrender of, oh, that curious mind of like, that's interesting, this is happening, what else do I need to do? Mm-hmm. So that's like, that is so valuable if you can shift into that and just surrender and forget about time, or that you've spent so much money already, or you've already addressed it, and, you know, just work with whatever is arising in the moment, whatever you're, you know, struggling with, and just, you know, say, this is up. I wonder what it is and what I need to do. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Which will help you speed along the process.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, the surrender does, yes.
Yeah. So, I think we've covered a lot. Let me just check.
Do we have questions?
Let me check to see if we have questions. I don't think we have. Doesn't look like any questions.
Just some comments.
Yeah, just comments. Thanks for your comments. Let me just see if I had anything. I think we actually covered it all without looking at my notes. Yeah. So I kind of want to conclude with we did just address what I wanted to conclude with, but like becoming the people who, if you may be in resistance right now, or you feel comfortable in what you know and you fear the unknown of actually, you know, changing things or going deeper because you're afraid of what could come up, or what your life will look like, or if you'll be able to support yourself. You know, there's a lot of unconscious beliefs that also contribute to that. And, one of the main ones is that nothing's going to work for me anyway, so why try? Like, nothing's ever worked, and then that belief gets reinforced by seeing your past and seeing how, well, I tried all these things and it didn't work, so it's not going to work for me. And the fear of your life falling apart. So the unconscious belief of nothing works for you actually comes from not getting your emotional needs met. So until you learn how to meet your own emotional needs, feel the emotions, then on a very core level, that shifts into knowing that your needs will get met and you can trust yourself for meeting them. So it's really interesting. And so you can maybe shift, that perspective and saying, oh, I see why I feel that way now. And what's needed is for you to do the work. And don't worry if your life, if things get messy. And I think the fear of your life falling apart, and the people who fear that the most are typically the people who need to be in control or that are very controlling to feel safe. And so that can create so much resistance to life supporting you. So releasing control and trusting life is, the growth with someone like that has the tendency to control, to feel safe. So the more that you release the control and trust that you are supported in life and you can feel safe through the emotional work. So connecting where the fear really comes from is the fear of the child who doesn't feel safe feeling. And so when you feel like the anger and the grief and validate and value your emotions, you actually feel safe in your body again, and then a lot of those physical symptoms can go away, like the digestive problems, the allergies, the outbreaks, the infections, and all of that is from not processing emotions and feeling safe and feeling lovable. So that's kind of a summary of how it shows up and what's needed and what's really the truth about it all. And one of the gifts is like even that practice and doing this work of releasing control and trusting that you can do this and you can take care of your emotional needs and life supports you, that doing that through this work helps you do it in all of life. So like surrendering to life is one of the most important lessons, not needing to control and being in the moment and responding to life supporting you and directing you, and the synchronicities that happen, and then it starts to become fun and magical and easy, and it's like, oh my god, this just happened and this just happened, and then you can play with your power of your conscious manifestation. So we're all manifesting unconsciously with our unconscious beliefs. All the things in our unconscious and in our shadow is attracting things to us that we don't want. So working in the unconscious and bringing that to light then helps us be able to work more powerfully with life and what we really want, and it happens easily and we're supported. So. Yes. And then your true self emerges, and and that emerges over time, and it's like, who I am now I have never been in my life. Like, it's not like you go back to a place, some people say, oh, I just want to feel like I used to feel and blah blah blah. I'm like, well, actually you'll feel better than you've ever felt, because you were still operating from this limited way and these suffering and these ways of relating to yourself, but you thought you were happy because you were getting approval or something at the time. But now it's like you don't need so much from the outside world, because you feel so good for loving who you really are. And and then your true self comes out. And yeah, how's that for you? How's that been?
It's great.
I mean, it's been, for you, it's been embracing who you are, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I mean, for me too, it was like more of like, oh my God, it's kind of like acknowledging who you are. And it's foreign. It's a little difficult at times, and I still have to see myself clearly of who I am and my gifts, and not fall back into, and some of the insecurities come up of like,
yes.
Yeah. I mean, and I still deal with that. It doesn't all shift and go away. There's times, every time we grow, the stuff's going to come up to clear. That will get in the way of our growth. So,
yes.
Any final words?
I think that, work for me, taking this step and working with you has been hands down the best decision of my life, right? So just put that out there. And it's opened, my world to so many things that I never would have even thought were possible for me. Or even imagined, right? And just if you're thinking about it and you take the leap, it's like I took the leap, right? And I'm going to say I was still on the fence when I first talked to you, but something drew me in and something said to do it, right? That intuition, right?
And Janet.
And Janet, okay, yes. And Janet, we love Janet too. That's true story. But to be fair, I did ultimately take that leap, right? Mm-hmm. So taking that was what. I mean,
and Janet Raftis is who we're talking about. Janet and I do so much work together. Like, our work is a perfect complement. Janet does energy healing, and she's a psychic medium, and so she can see what's actually going on, in the energy field and when the patterns got created. So it's great for clients who aren't aware of it, and then I can help them work with it more once it's in their conscious. So Jen and I refer each other back and forth, and we also do the retreats in Costa Rica together. So Jocelyn's been working with Janet and I for, ever since we started. So for 2 years, consistently with Janet too. Yes. So sometimes Janet will refer, people to me who don't work with me. It's not always, but you did listen to your intuition. It was like, it resonated. Like, yeah, okay.
Yes.
So, yeah. And thank you for sharing your story and your experience and helping other people embrace the journey and the work and seeing the results and the benefit of doing it. So
yeah, it's been an amazing journey, and now I'm able to actually use my gifts to help others too with it too. So it's amazing. Yeah.
So that is the result. The physical symptoms typically is the way in, because most people can't connect to anything but like relieving themselves from the physical suffering at first. So it's like, just whatever is causing this, tell me. But really the physical symptoms are there because the emotional things that have been neglected are actually blocking you from your true purpose. But we can't say, and maybe you can say, maybe you can see, you don't have to have physical symptoms. I work with a lot of people who just have, struggles and low self-esteem or eating disorders or relationship patterns that keep happening. And also people who just don't know what they want to do or what their gifts are, what their purpose is, or they feel confused. So there's always different reasons why people start the work, but then the benefits unfold beyond the original reason. So yeah, clearing that. All right, so just let me know if you have any questions.
I don't think we have any.
I don't think we had any, yeah. But thanks for watching this, and wishing you surrender and trust, and a deepening of your experience while we're here on Earth. Bye.
Bye.
Love you.